Okay, welcome to the deep dive. We've got our notes, articles, reports all spread out here.
Yeah, and today we're digging into some really pretty surprising news. The U.S. decision to lift certain key sanctions on Syria. Big stuff.
Definitely big. So our goal here, as always, is to unpack this. We want to get the key details straight, understand the history behind it all, and figure out what this actually means.
Exactly. It's a really fascinating example of just how quickly international relations can, well, pivot. And understanding these shifts is vital, not just for general knowledge, but if you're preparing for something specific, like the UPSC mains or prelims, this is exactly the kind of current affairs dynamic you need to grasp.
Absolutely. So let's jump right in. The big announcement itself, it came from the Trump administration on a Saturday and during a Gulf tour, which is interesting timing.
Very interesting. And here's where it gets, well, even more intriguing, according to the sources. During that tour, the U.S. president actually met with Syria's new, quote, interim president, Ahmed al-Shara.
Right, Shara, the figure who came to power after Bashar al-Assad was overthrown back in December.
And the really astonishing part, our sources highlight this clearly. Shara wasn't just anybody. Not too long ago, Washington had designated him a terrorist.
A designated terrorist with a $10 million bounty on his head. Going from that to meeting the U.S. president is, well, it's quite something.
It really signals a dramatic recalculation in U.S. policy towards Syria. Huge shift. So how did Syria itself react?
Their foreign ministry, perhaps unsurprisingly, welcomed it. They called it a positive step, specifically saying it should help ease the terrible humanitarian and economic suffering in the country.
Which has been immense. Now, to really get the significance, you need the backstory on these sanctions. They aren't new.
Not at all. They actually started way back under Hafez al-Assad, Bashar's father. We're talking 1979.
But they were massively expanded in 2011. That was after the civil war started, and Bashar al-Assad's regime responded, very violently.
That's when Washington really tightened the screws. Broad restrictions on financial transactions, specifically targeting anyone involved in reconstruction if Assad was still in charge, basically trying to cut off his funding.
Right. So fast forward to now. Sanctions are being lifted, or at least eased. How's that happening on the ground?
Well, the U.S. Treasury is apparently actively encouraging new investment. They're putting specific authorizations in place to sort of grease the wheels for financial flows.
But it's not just open season, right? There are strings attached.
Definitely. The relief comes with clear conditions for Shara's government. The Treasury stated they need to ensure Syria doesn't become a safe haven for terrorist groups.
Okay, that's condition one.
And condition two, ensuring security for religious and ethnic minorities. These kinds of conditions, as you know, are pretty standard tools in international policy.
Key levers, exactly. And alongside these conditions, the State Department made another big move. A 180-day waiver for the Caesar Act.
Ah, yes, the Caesar Act. Remind us what that was.
That act from 2020 was pretty tough. It sanctioned basically any foreign company or person doing business with the Assad government. So this waiver pauses those specific sanctions for 6 months.
Okay, so pausing those sanctions, what does that enable specifically?
According to the source material, it's designed to open the door for a few key things. Foreign investment, naturally, but also financial services, transactions involving Syrian oil and gas.
And importantly, humanitarian work. Things like fixing the electricity grid, energy supplies, water, sanitation, all devastated by the war.
Exactly. And U.S. officials, people like Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Secretary of State Marco Rubio, they've been quite clear on the messaging.
What are they saying?
They're framing this as just the first step, the beginning, potentially, of a new relationship with Syria. The stated goal is promoting recovery and reconstruction.
After 14 years of brutal civil war, yeah. Over 500,000 dead, infrastructure just shattered.
Yeah.
It's hard to even imagine the scale.
It truly is. And Rubio also added that the U.S. expects prompt action from the new Syrian government on U.S. policy priorities now that this relief is happening.
So there's an expectation of reciprocity.
Seems so. And just to add one more piece of context, the European Union also announced it was lifting some of its sanctions around the same time, specifically targeting the banking sector, unfreezing some central bank assets. So a bit of a coordinated or at least parallel move.
Okay, so putting it all together, what's the immediate outlook based on what we're reading? Is it all smooth sailing now for Syria?
Not exactly. The sources suggest a full lifting of all sanctions is probably still a way off. Some restrictions actually need Congress to act.
Right, legislative hurdles.
And critically, the new Syrian authorities themselves have a huge task. They need to create an environment that actually attracts foreign investment. Stability, rule of law, predictability, that's essential.
So to quickly summarize, a really significant policy shift from the U.S., rooted in a long history of sanctions, involving specific actions like waivers and authorizations, but also clear conditions. And it's happening against the backdrop of this devastating war and a potential opening with a new government, though the road to recovery is clearly still very long.
You got it.
Yeah.
Understanding these moving parts, the history, the players like Shara, the mechanics of the Caesar Act waiver, the conditions, it gives you the essential context for this major current event. Really valuable stuff to know, whether just for staying informed or, again, if you're tracking geopolitics for something like the UPSC exam.
It definitely is. Which leads us to a final thought for you, the listener, to mull over.
Given that long, difficult history we talked about and the specific conditions the U.S. has attached to this relief, what do you think will be the single biggest challenge for this new Syrian government in actually using this opportunity effectively for the country's recovery?
Something to really think about. We hope this deep dive gave you some clarity. If you found it useful, please do like and subscribe. It helps us keep bringing you these analyses.
And please leave a comment below if you have more questions or if there are other complex topics you'd like us to tackle in a future deep dive. Thanks for joining us.